What might the first round look like in 2024? Find out next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Tuesday, September 26th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott Witt. And before you freak out that we have to talk about this season and what's going on, Monday there was only 4 games. We don't really have any injury updates, so we're going to do this instead. Let's talk about the first round. Scott has an article that is live on the site right now. The first 4 picks in 2024. Ronald Acuna, no-brainer, followed by Bobby Witt Jr., Julio Rodriguez, and Corbin Carroll.
Yes. So what I've done here is prioritize stolen bases early in a Roto League draft. Who knew that someone might want to do that? I have talked about how, it's a much more stolen base rich landscape now with some of the rule changes. There are a lot more 20 steal guys out there, really twice as many as last year. And that's true. But these guys at the top here are more like 50 steal guys. So Ronald Acuna became the 3rd player in history with 30 homers, 50 steals in the same season. And of course, he's gone beyond those thresholds now. Bobby Witt's very close to becoming the 4th player with that. And he's, for as good as his numbers are, he's actually underperformed his estimated stats on StatCast who make him out to be more like a 300 hitter. I don't know that he needs to get to that to justify the 2nd overall pick in Roto. But Witt's a 50 steal guy. Julio Rodriguez could be like a 40 steal guy with plenty of power. Corbin Carroll, he's been a 50 steal guy in his rookie season. He has a chance of becoming the next 30 homer 50 steal guy next year. And so there's a big difference, but there's still a big difference. Even though there are a lot more 20 steal guys out there, there's a big difference between 20 steals and 50 steals, especially when those 50 steals are coming from players who can produce like a first rounder just as hitters, just on the non-stolen base stats. So I think you're doing yourself a disservice by not taking them at the top of a Roto draft, even if there is slightly more risk with a guy like Corbin Carroll, for instance, in the recurring shoulder issues. 5th and 6th here, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. I think if not for that big disparity in stolen bases, if we're just assessing Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman as hitters, you could make the case for them to go ahead of those big base stealers. In fact, in points leagues, I have Freddie Freeman as my number 2 player, Mookie Betts as my number 3 player. Obviously, being at the top of the Dodgers lineup, they're delivering a ton of runs, a ton of RBI. They're plenty of power. Freddie Freeman, especially, you're going to get a great batting average from him. I think once those just sort of uber base stealers who still provide power numbers, once they're off the board, Betts and Freeman make for slam dunk choices right after that.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Scott. There are more steals available than ever before, but that means you also need more steals to compete in your Roto leagues and, finish in the top half of your league. And chances are someone like Bobby Witt, Julio Rodriguez, and Corbin Carroll are going to help you attain that next season. 5 through 8 in the first round, you have Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, which you mentioned, followed by Kyle Tucker and Spencer Strider. Strider, we know the ERA is a little inflated, but leads baseball in strikeouts by far. Kyle Tucker is closing in on a 30-30 season, good batting average. I kind of want to skip down to the bottom 4, Scott, because these names are, in my opinion, more interesting. 9 through 12, Fernando Tatis, which I think people will have some question marks about. He clearly has not had a very good second half here, but still providing power and speed. Aaron Judge on a 50 home run pace, but he missed a lot of time this year. Corey Seager has been amazing, but he has an extensive injury history. And the same thing could be said for Yordan Alvarez. So big upside here, Scott, but I think, some potentially lower floors with the injuries as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more room for argument in the bottom 4 here than there was with the top 6. And, I also want to rope my top 3 second rounders into this because I think you can make the case for any of them over Tatis, Judge, Corey Seager, and Yordan Alvarez. And they are Matt Olson, Jose Ramirez, and Trea Turner. I feel like there are more first round caliber bats that can fit in round 1. I think Fernando Tatis, what's important to keep in mind with him is that for the time he missed early this season, coming back from a completely lost 2022 season. Yeah, the overall production isn't quite what we were hoping for, but he's still on a near 30 pace. He's going to come close to a 30 season. And so, like, why would you turn up your nose to that in round one? Maybe he'll never get back to being the 40-plus homer guy he was prior to shoulder surgery, prior to that PED suspension, but he still is capable of filling up the categories. And we might look back and say 9th overall was too low at this time next year. Aaron Judge, of course, he was the number one player in fantasy just last year. So even though he has some injury risk, I don't want to discount the upside. I don't want to lower him too far. And Corey Seager, MVP caliber bat, missed some time with injury this year, but I think his production this year was closer to what it should have been all along than some of the ups and downs we've seen in the years that preceded it. He finally put together the package that I knew existed for Corey Seager. And I think that makes him worth targeting in round one. If he stays healthy, certainly he'll live up to that, even if he's not going to be a big base stealer. Yordan Alvarez, kind of in the same category as Aaron Judge. I think they're very similar in terms of risk reward. He hasn't delivered the 250-plus homer seasons that Judge has, but I think one of these years Alvarez is going to have that year where he bats like 315 with 50 homers. So, I'm kind of prioritizing upside here with these choices at the end of round one. But as I said, Matt Olson, Jose Ramirez, Trea Turner, they're in that conversation too.
All right. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.